Hi, welcome back. Today we're going to be looking at advanced selectors. So right now we've looked at our basic selectors, so our class selectors, element selectors, and ID selectors. And we've also looked at some pseudo selectors, which is very useful. But now we're going to look at some of the more advanced selectors. Now you're not going to use these every day. They're not used very commonly, but it just shows what you can actually do with these selectors because there is a lot. So there's a bunch of advanced selectors, and I'm actually going to be breaking these down into two parts. We're going to be looking first at our basic advanced selectors, and I know that sounds a little bit contradictory, but we'll get into that in just a second. And then after that, we're going to be talking about attribute selectors, which are probably the hardest type of selector to get used to. All right, let's get started. So the first thing I want to talk about is how you actually set up these selectors. Now, these sometimes contain 1, 2, or sometimes even 3 elements in one selector. So I'm going to be going through these and talking about how they all work. So the first selector I'm going to be talking about is something called the adjacent sibling selector. So pretty much what this does is select every single element that directly follows a different element. So I'll show you how to set this up. Let's first take a look at our HTML page over here. Now you can see we have our services, which is our H2, and then we have an A tag. Now, first thing I want to do is actually go ahead and get rid of these two. I'm going to actually comment them out. You can do this with Control/, just like that. So if you type Control/, it comments it, which pretty much just renders it useless. It doesn't run or anything like that. Let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and set this up. So I want to be able to apply styles to every A tag or anchor tag that comes directly after an H2. So the way to set this up is all you have to do is go the element that you want to be the first element. So in this case, it's going to be our H2. And then afterwards, it's going to be the element that you want after, which is our A tag. So you want H2 plus A. So this is pretty much saying every anchor tag that follows an H2. So then we can pretty much just set the style however we want. So I'm going to say color is red, just like that. Now remember, there is no pseudo selector on this. If you could add it if you wanted to, because this is still a selector, remember. But I'm not going to add any. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page, and you can see it turns red again. So that's the first type of selector. Next thing I want to look at is the general sibling combinator or selector. So this is a little bit more difficult to understand, but all in good time, once you get used to it, it becomes much easier to understand. So pretty much what the general sibling selector does is goes for the same kind of idea as this selector here. It looks for elements that go directly after one another, except they have to be sharing the same parent, okay? So, for example, let's see our input here, our form. We have an input and a text area, or a button followed by a text area, for example. So what we're going to do here is I want to style every button that's followed by a text area, except in this case, they have to share the same parent. So what we're going to do is go and say every button, which is going to be the next one, or the final one, which is A here. So sorry, it's actually going to be text area, right? Because that's the first element here, which is our text area. And then this symbol followed, and then it's going to be our button, like that. So this is saying every button that is followed or that is after a text area, but they're in the same parent. So from here, we can go and style it however we want. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and just say the color is purple. Oops. Now if we go ahead and refresh, you can see that the button color is purple. So like I said, the main difference between these two is that the first one is going to be styling elements that follow each other no matter where they are on the scale. So if you actually look up here, they don't share any parent. They're completely separate elements. Whereas here, they have to follow each other. And I'll actually demonstrate that quickly. If we change this to a plus here and refresh, the style is still going to work because they are directly preceded. But the only thing is if they aren't, so for example, I'm just going to actually move this button out of the form. Just like that. Whoops. Seems like the button disappeared there. Let's go ahead and redo that. Okay, so we have the button back. Now if I'm going to go ahead and change this back to our symbol there, and if I go ahead and refresh, you can see that the button right there, it doesn't actually have that styling anymore, because although they directly follow each other, they're not under the same parent. So that's just one minor difference. All right, let's move on to the next one. It's called the child selector. So this is probably the most basic out of all of these advanced selectors. And pretty much what it is saying is every single child of a certain element. So I'll give you an example here. We have an li and a ul. This is pretty basic. All you have to do is type ul, which is going to be our parent, and then this symbol, or the greater than symbol, and li. So this is going to say every single li inside of a ul. Open up the brackets, and let's set the color this time to blue. I'm just going to say that. And remember, specificity is at play here. Now, like I said, the specificity rules, once you use these advanced selectors, get quite complicated. But for example, if we actually look at the li here, the style for this, we can see that the li with the pseudo selector is actually more specific than this general selector. So I'm going to go ahead and comment that out. Now if we refresh the page, you can see that it's blue. So that's just one thing to keep in mind with these advanced selectors. They can get pretty complicated, and that's why we use the numbers, the zeros, ones, twos, things like that, is to be able to classify these once we get and start using these advanced selectors. But like I said, usually you won't use these in your general use. So I'm not going to go over specificity, especially because usually you'll group up all of these styles into one selector. Okay, so that's the child selector. The next one is very similar to the child selector, but instead of having direct children, there's actually something called a descendant. So I'm just going to go ahead and edit this a little bit. I'm going to have an li, okay? But then I'm going to create an ordered list inside of the, Actually, I need to create an li and put the ordered list inside of that. So pretty much what's going on here is I'm creating an ordered list or a numbered list inside of a list item that is inside of a ul. It's a little bit complicated, but we'll get to that in just a second. So I'm going to create an li inside of this, and I'm going to say my numbered list item, just like that. All right. So now I'm going to go ahead and refresh the page, and you can see we have a list item here with our item. All right. So let's get started on using this descendant selector. So I'm going to get started. First thing I want to do is actually set this up. So first thing we're going to have is the parent. Okay. So in this case, it's going to be our ul. Remember, because that's the top level. But then I'm going to select the li here, but I'm not going to put our greater than symbol. So that's the big difference. This is the descendant selector, and then this is going to be our child selector. So that's just the main difference. It's very easy to miss. Just make sure that you don't mess that up. So now I'm going to select the color and set it to, for now, let's just say green. All right. Now let's go ahead and refresh the page, and you can see that all of the LIs inside of there are going to be green, right? Only problem is our ordered list right here is actually purple, right? And of course, you know, our list here is getting a little bit complicated. So I'm going to go ahead and comment this out. Remember, this is a very specific selector. Now, if I go ahead and refresh, both of them are green. All right. So what you need to take away from this is pretty much what this is saying is any LI that eventually boils back or propagates up, if you have done any programming before, that goes up to a UL. Okay. So I'll just show you what that means. In this case, the LI is a direct child of the UL, right? But then we have another LI in here, which is a child of an OL, which is a child of an LI, which is a child of the UL, right? So as you move up and up, it eventually comes back to the UL as the parent element. So the main difference you need to take away from this is that the child selector is selecting any direct children. So anything here would not apply because, or actually, this one wouldn't apply because the ordered list is actually a child of the LI, remember. But when you're using the descendant selector, what actually happens is if it is contained inside of a UL at all, then use or apply the styles. So I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate this now. Let's go ahead and actually remove this LI. Remember, because once you get to this point, CSS gets a little bit complicated. This is going to end up styling everything inside it. So I'm actually just going to remove this and leave it just the ordered list. So right now we have the ordered list as a child of the UL. Now I'm going to go ahead and refresh, and you can see it still stays the same because we have this style applied. But why don't we go ahead and remove this? What do you think is going to happen? Well, you can see here that this stays blue, remember, because of our direct child selector, but then this doesn't have any style at all. So this LI works perfectly. It is a direct child of the UL, which means it's going to be colored with the style specified. The only problem is this LI is a direct child of the ordered list, which is completely separate from this one. So the styles aren't going to be applied on this one. On the other hand, if we did have our Descendant Selector enabled, it's going to style both of them, because remember, the LI is a child of the OL and the OL is a child of the UL. So just keep that in mind. There's a big difference between the two. You might be able to miss it. It could really mess up your code. So just make sure to keep that in mind. Alright, so those are pretty much the basic advanced selectors. Those are the 4 that you're mainly going to use. Again, there's many more, but they are quite difficult, and we're not going to cover them because they're not very useful. So there we go. Those are the 4 selectors that you can use. Go ahead and practice them as much as you want. Try messing them around, open up some HTML files, and just see what you can do with them. All right, let's move on.